And what is up there, YouTube? This is J-Man Time, and today I have a video on some rare Saudi-made armored fighting vehicles that have been developed since the early to mid 1990s. When you think of armored fighting vehicles in Saudi Arabia, you would think that Saudi Arabia imported all of their armored fighting vehicles used by the Saudi military and the Saudi National Guard. But you would be wrong, as Saudi Arabia has been manufacturing some of their own armored fighting vehicles since at least the 1970s and 80s. But in this video, we're going to go over the modern armored fighting vehicles that have been in service with the Saudi forces since at least the 1990s, as that's the farthest back I could go with this video. Now, Saudi Arabia actually has a pretty large military. The Saudi armed forces overall have at least 433,000 troops. These are Saudi army soldiers, Saudi National Guards, and Saudi Arabian border patrol agents or border guards. Now, the Saudi army mostly imports their weapons from the United States, France, Britain, Germany, and even countries like Russia and China, with the main battle tank being the American M1 Abrams and the French Leclerc, along with some older tanks like the American M48 and M60 Patton tanks. But Saudi Arabia does manufacture some of their own infantry fighting vehicles. Now, they don't manufacture any tanks, but they do make a large number of armored personnel carriers, MRAPs, and armored cars and trucks. So let's go over some of the mostly rare or in some cases forgotten armored vehicles manufactured in Saudi Arabia. And the first vehicle on the list is the most mass-produced Saudi vehicle or Saudi heavy vehicle thus far, and that is the Al-Fahd armored personnel carrier or armored fighting vehicle that was developed between 1997 and entering service in 1998. The Al-Fahd is a 16-ton armored fighting vehicle developed by the Abdul Al-Faris Company and Heavy Industries between 1997 and 1998. It was based on the American and Canadian LAV series, or the LAV series of armored personnel carriers used by both the American and Canadian forces since the early to mid 1990s. The main armament is either one 40mm autocannon or one 40mm Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher. And there is a second version of the Al-Fahd known as the Al-Faris 840, and this variant is fitted with a 105mm recoilless gun. This vehicle uses Stanag armor, which is a NATO designation for a standard series of mine-resistant and all-around ballistic protection armor, or modular armor in some cases. In this vehicle, the Stanag steel alloy with Kevlar spall liners to protect itself from small arms fire, and even some anti-tank rocket launchers like the old RPG-2 and RPG-7, which is still used by a lot of countries in the region. The speed of the Al-Fahd is 90 kilometers per hour or 56 miles per hour, and the vehicle has a crew of 4 but can carry 11 troops, as this is an armored personnel carrier. Now, Saudi Arabia has manufactured at least 700 to 800 of these vehicles and has exported these Al-Fahd vehicles to some countries. The biggest buyer is Pakistan, as Pakistan has 500 Al-Fahd armored fighting vehicles within service in the Pakistani army. They have also been exported to Kuwait, Yemen, and Lebanon, and have been seen in the Lebanese conflicts, and have also been spotted during the ongoing war in Yemen, the 2015 through 2021 as so far war in Yemen, in the hands of the pro-Hadi forces. This is the Yemen National Army under Abu Mansur Hadi, who is the recognized government of Yemen, and there is a 4-way civil war happening in Yemen between the Yemen government, the Houthi rebels, the South Yemen movement, and Al-Qaeda, as Al-Qaeda controls at least 15 to 30% of Yemen's overall territory. The Al-Fahd armored fighting vehicle is the largest vehicle produced by Saudi Arabia at this point in 2021, but it wasn't the only one designed. Way back in 2006, another company known as the Saudi Group Company, or the SGC, had developed Saudi Arabia's first armored reconnaissance vehicle, or heavy armored reconnaissance vehicle, and that is the Al-Faisal ARV that was developed between 2006 and 2007. Now, this vehicle has never been unveiled yet as of 2021, but according to its developer, it is still under development as of 2021. The vehicle is pretty much the Saudi equivalent of the American M1 Bradley, or maybe the Russian BTR-82 and 84 series of armored fighting vehicles. The main armament would have been, or is supposed to be, one 27mm German-made Mauser BK-27 autocannon, and the secondary armament is one 12.7mm Russian NSV heavy machine gun. The armor is Stanag level 10B, meaning it can withstand high explosive rounds, not direct high explosive rounds, but high explosive shells from, let's say, mortars exploding next to the vehicle, or high explosive rounds from howitzers exploding within 100 to 80 yards of the vehicle. It is pretty much bulletproof with the exception of the tires, and this vehicle would have had a speed of 90 kilometers per hour or 56 miles per hour. The vehicle would have a crew of 3, but could carry 9 troops, as it is also an armored personnel carrier. So you have an armored reconnaissance vehicle that is also an armored personnel carrier, and that is this proposed but still has not been unveiled Al-Faisal ARV that was originally designed in 2006. The last update on this vehicle was from 2017, as the SGC group has posted some concept art of what this vehicle is to look like once it is unveiled at some point in the coming years. So far, the Al-Faisal ARV has not been unveiled as of 2021. Saudi Arabia's main export vehicle, or at least the vehicle class that they manufacture the most, are MRAPs, or mine-resistant armored personnel carriers. And the first MRAP to be manufactured by Saudi Arabia, at least in the last 10 years, is the Al-Faisal MRAP that was developed between 2010 and 2011 and entering service in 2011. Now, the Al-Faisal MRAP was developed by the Saudi group company, the same group that developed the previous vehicle, the Al-Faisal ARV. This vehicle here is pretty much just a simple MRAP. It's a pretty light vehicle, weighing just 3.3 tons. The main armament is one 20mm autocannon, but it could also be fitted with one or two 12.7mm machine guns, or one 40mm Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher and a remote-controlled turret. The armor is Stanag level 10B, just like the previous vehicle, and that this vehicle has a speed of 150 kilometers per hour or 93.2 miles per hour, and it has a crew of 3, but can carry upwards to 9 troops, and only about 100 to 250 of these vehicles have been manufactured since 2011, and they have been spotted in the Yemen war since at least 2016 in the hands of pro-Yemen forces and Saudi troops that are also based in Yemen, as the Saudi army is involved directly in the war in Yemen. Both on the border with Saudi Arabia, there is a border war between the Saudi government forces and the Yemen Houthi rebels, and there's also Saudi troops fighting in the country against both the Houthis and other, anti-Houthi forces in the country. And this Al-Faisal MRAP is one of the vehicles that has been exported to Yemen, or has been used by Saudi forces in Yemen since about 2015 to 2016. Another heavier MRAP is the Al-Masmak MRAP that was also developed at the same time, around 2010 to 2011, and entering service in the same year of 2011. This vehicle is a much larger vehicle, weighing 16.5 tons, so even larger. It weighs even more than the Al-Fahd vehicle. The main armament is just one 12.7mm machine gun, either an American M2 Browning or a Russian KORD or KORD heavy machine gun, in a remote control turret, but can also be fitted with a Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher in the same turret. The armor is Stanag level 4A and 4B, so it has weaker armor than the other vehicles on the list. The speed of the vehicle is 150 kilometers per hour or 93.2 miles per hour, and it has a crew of 2 but can carry 9 troops, as this is a MRAP-based armored personnel carrier. Only about 100 to 200 of the Al-Masmak MRAP has been manufactured in the last decade. Now, some of these have been spotted in Yemen again in the hands of pro-Houthi forces, and a few of these have been captured by the Houthi rebels in Yemen. And a few of these have been spotted being destroyed in combat, at least on film, during the various battles between the Houthi rebels and the Hadi government in Yemen. And they have also been used by the South Yemen forces. This is another faction in the Yemen war. It's a very shaky faction, as the South Yemen forces sometimes fight alongside the pro-Saudi government in Yemen, and sometimes they fight against them. But they also fight the Houthis and Al-Qaeda forces on the ground in Yemen. And the Al-Masmak MRAP is one of the vehicles that they also use in the Yemen civil war. Now another vehicle, or at least another series of MRAP type vehicles, is the Al-Fahd AF-1 and Al-Fahd AF-2. These were first experimental MRAP, or mine-resistant armored personnel carriers, first unveiled in 2013, but later on it was redesigned into a simpler vehicle known as the Al-Fahd AF-2. Now, the first vehicle was developed in 2013 and had a main armament of one 12.7mm machine gun or one 40mm grenade launcher and a revolving turret. It can also use the Russian grenade launcher, the ASG-30, which is the Russian equivalent to the American Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher, and a remote-controlled revolving turret. The armor is Stanog level 3, meaning it has weaker armor than the Al-Masmak vehicle. The speed is 110 kilometers per hour, or 62 miles per hour, and the vehicle weighs just 13 to 14.5 tons, and has a crew of 3, but can carry between 6 and 8 troops. Only one prototype of the Al-Fahd AF-1 was completed in early 2013, and it was unveiled, but was never put into production. Later on, in 2016, a secondary version known as the Al-Fahd AF-2 was unveiled, and this is the version that was adopted by the Saudi Armed Forces, and has also been exported to Yemen and a few other countries in the region. The second version is just more simple in terms of its outer appearance, and it still has a more modern version of the Stanog level 3 modular protection armor. And these have been spotted in the Yemen war mostly, but they have also been exported to neighboring countries like the UAE and Bahrain and a few other places. This vehicle, again, has been mostly spotted in Yemen, where it seems to do okay on the battlefield, but the only problem is a lot of these end up being destroyed because the Houthi forces have anti-tank guided missiles, or ATMGs, and MRAP vehicles are still susceptible to being destroyed by ATMGs, especially at mid to close range. And this vehicle is no exception. And then there is another rarer MRAP type armored fighting vehicle that was unveiled in 2016. And this vehicle here is the Salman Al-Hazm armored fighting vehicle in MRAP that was developed in 2015 and entered service in 2016, mostly as an export vehicle, although it was meant for the Saudi Army. Now, this vehicle was developed by the Armed Forces Spare Parts and Material Corporation, or the AFED, based in Riyadh, way back in 2015, and entered limited service with both the Saudi Army and the pro-Yemen forces, the Yemen government forces, in the Yemen war. Only 30 of these vehicles have been produced in total since 2016, so it's a very small number of these MRAPs serving in the Saudi Armed Forces and in Yemen and the Yemen National Army. The main armament is one 12.7mm either American M2 Browning or Russian NSV heavy machine gun. We can also use the 7.62mm machine gun. The secondary armament is one 40mm Mark 19 grenade launcher and the same turret. Now the turret is either manned, but there have been unmanned versions of this vehicle where the turret is completely remote controlled and from the inside of the vehicle. So the vehicles vary, and the weight of these vehicles is between 16 and 16.5 tons. The vehicle's speed is unknown, but the vehicle has a crew of either 3 plus 6 to 8 troops that can be carried, as this vehicle is also an armored personnel carrier too. But like I said, only 30 of these vehicles have been produced since 2016, and they are a rarity in the war in Yemen. And then that brings me to the first MRAP type armored vehicle to be developed by the Saudi forces, at least since the 1990s. This vehicle series was developed between 1997 and 2008, and that is the Al-Shabab 1 and Al-Shabab 2. And this is a Saudi reconstruction of the Japanese Toyota Land Cruiser. Yes, the Toyota Land Cruiser truck, the civilian truck. These are civilian trucks that have been rebuilt into light armored personnel carrier MRAP type armored fighting vehicles, and they were first unveiled way back in 1997-1998, the Al-Fahd AF-1 series. There was a second series, or is a second series, known as the Al-Shabab 2, which entered service in 2007-2008. These vehicles are armed with one 12.7mm machine gun in either a manned turret or an unmanned remote control turret, but can also use a 7.62mm light machine gun like the German-made MG3. The secondary armament is one 40mm Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher, and this vehicle has Tanag level 3 and 4 modular armor. The speed of this vehicle is 120 kilometers per hour or 88 miles per hour, and this vehicle has a crew of 3 but can carry between 6 and 8 troops. But the vehicle is pretty light at just 4.6 tons, so it's much lighter than the other armored personnel carriers and MRAPs on this list. And a few hundred of these have been made, anywhere from 2 to 500, and they have been exported to Yemen, but also Turkmenistan, as Turkmenistan is an ally of Saudi Arabia also. These vehicles have been spotted throughout the whole of the Yemen civil war and are some of the more common armored fighting vehicles used by both the Saudi forces and the pro-Saudi Yemeni government forces, including the South Yemen forces, which is a separate government entity, or separate government force in the south of Yemen. Both the Al-Shabab 1 and Al-Shabab 2 have been captured by the Houthi forces, have also been captured by Al-Qaeda forces in Yemen. Houthi militias are seen driving these vehicles occasionally, and they are some of the more common modern armored fighting vehicles to be captured by the Houthis. Some of these vehicles were taken over by Al-Qaeda in the city of Al-Mukalla, that is a large city near the UAE border, or the border with the UAE in Yemen. Now, Al-Qaeda actually took over several large towns in the eastern half of Yemen, and they captured a number of these Al-Shabab 1 and Al-Shabab 2 MRAP type armored personnel carriers and armored fighting vehicles. So this is the most extensive vehicle, or a Saudi vehicle, to be used in that conflict in Yemen. Another more modern MRAP type vehicle is the Al-Duna, which is a multi-purpose all-terrain MRAP based armored fighting vehicle that was developed between 2015 and 2016 and entering service in 2016 with both the Saudi Army, and some of these were also exported to Yemen. The main armament is one 12.7mm Russian Kord, or KORD, heavy machine gun, but can also use a 7.62mm light machine gun as the main armament. It can also be fitted with a 40mm Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher, and the armor is Tanag level 1 and 2 all-around ballistic protection. The weight of the vehicle is between the 6 and 8 tons, and the vehicle has a speed of 150 kilometers per hour, or 93.2 miles per hour, and it has a crew of 3 but can carry between 6 and 8 troops. And only about 100 or so have been manufactured since 2018. These vehicles are all-terrain vehicles, and they have been spotted during the war in Yemen also, in the hands of both Saudi forces and pro-government Yemen forces. And a few of these have been captured by the Houthi rebels also, who are based out of Sanaa City, which is the actual capital of Yemen. Another Toyota-based vehicle is the Saudi-made APV-1 and APV-2 series of armored patrol vehicles that are based on the Japanese Toyota model J70-HZ-J79 troop carrier. Now in the US and in other countries, these are just civilian vehicles, but in Saudi Arabia, many of these have been rebuilt into armored patrol vehicles of the AVP class, and these have been in production since 2015. The main armament, again, is one 12.7mm machine gun, or one 7.62mm machine gun, in either a manned turret or an unmanned turret. The speed is 193 kilometers per hour, or 120 miles per hour, and the vehicle has a crew of 3, but can carry upwards to 8 troops. Only a few hundred of these have been spotted during the Yemen civil war, and they have been used by both the pro-Yemen government forces, and some of these have been captured by the Houthi rebels also. But they are predominantly used by the Saudi forces, both in Saudi Arabia and Saudi troops that are based in Yemen. And the most obvious Toyota-based armored vehicle used by the Saudi forces is the Saudi-made MTV, or the multitask vehicle. And this is a 4x4 multi-purpose semi-armored technical that was developed or unveiled between 2012 and 2015. Since 2015, these vehicles have been mass-produced and have been seen all over the battlefield in Yemen. The main armament is either one 7.62mm machine gun or one 12.7mm machine gun, but could also be used as a semi-armored mortar carrier, carrying either one 60mm, one 81mm, or one 120mm mortar system. Some of these have been fitted with anti-tank missiles, mostly the American BGM-71 TOW ATMG system, or anti-tank guided missile system, and the speed is just 193 kilometers per hour, or 120 miles per hour, and the vehicle has a crew of 3 but can carry 4 in total. At least 500 to 1,000 of these have been manufactured. Now, these aren't truly armored fighting vehicles because they're not completely armored. Some of these have modular armor, and some of these have hobo armor, as they call it. Hobo armor, as they call it, which is just cheap add-on armor. And these have been spotted all throughout the Yemen conflict in the hands of both Saudi forces and mostly in the hands of the Saudi government forces. And many of these have been captured by both the Houthi forces and the South Yemen forces and Al-Qaeda and even ISIS in Yemen. Yes, ISIS actually controls a handful of small villages in Yemen, and they have even captured some of these vehicles too. And these are just Toyota troop carriers rebuilt into multi-purpose, semi-armored, sometimes semi-armored technicals that have been in production since the early 2010s. And then there is another semi-armored combat vehicle manufactured by the Saudi forces, and this is a recoilless gun vehicle known as the RGV-106. The RGV-106 is another Toyota vehicle that has been reconstructed into a light semi-armored combat vehicle, entering service sometime between 2010 and 2012 with both the Saudi forces, and they have been exported to a number of countries, and mainly Yemen again, as Yemen is right on the border with Saudi Arabia, and they have too many problems with different militant groups, namely Al-Qaeda, but also the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels. The main armament is one 106mm M40 recoilless gun, and the vehicle has a secondary armament of one 12.7mm machine gun or one 7.62mm machine gun. The armor is Stanag Level 1 modular armor over vital areas, so the vehicle is only partially armored, and it has a speed of 193 kilometers per hour, just like the previous vehicle. The vehicle has a crew of 3 to 4, and a few hundred of these have been manufactured and used by both the Saudi forces and the Yemen government forces in the Yemen war. And a few of these have been captured by the Houthi forces also in the Yemen civil war. And then the final class of vehicles to be manufactured by the Saudi forces are vehicles that were made specifically for the Saudi border guard agencies. Now, Saudi Arabia has its own border guard divisions. These are Saudi troops that are specifically trained to monitor the border, mostly with Yemen, as Yemen has too many internal problems that are spilling over into Saudi Arabia. There are Houthi fighters or Houthi-aligned militia groups that are fighting the Saudi forces in the area of Najreen, which is a province in southern Saudi Arabia. And this province has been mostly taken over by the Houthi-aligned Shia militias operating in that part of the country. And so as a result, Saudi Arabia has been manufacturing vehicles for the Saudi Arabian National Guard and the Saudi Border Guard divisions. And the first vehicle to be manufactured for these units was the Al-Mansur anti-terror armored personnel carrier from 2011. The vehicle has a main armament of one 12.7mm machine gun or one 20mm machine gun or one 40mm Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher in a either manned turret or unmanned revolving turret. The armor is Stanag Level 1 and 2 all-around ballistic protection, and the vehicle has a speed of 130 kilometers per hour or 80 miles per hour. And the vehicle has a crew of 3 but can carry 8 troops, as it is basically an armored personnel carrier designed for policing duties. Only a few hundred of these vehicles have been made, mainly about 100 to 200 vehicles since 2012, and they are mostly used by the Saudi Arabian National Guard and the Saudi Arabian Border Guard divisions. Then there is the smaller armored personnel carrier known as the Al-NAIF APC, and this is another anti-terror armored personnel carrier from 2011. The main armament is either 1 or 2 7.62mm machine guns, or 1 12.7mm machine gun, but could also be fitted with either a Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher or a smoke grenade launcher. The armor is Stanag level 1 and 2, again, just like the previous vehicle, and the vehicle speed is largely unknown. The vehicle has a crew of 3 but can carry 9 troops, and is again used by both the Saudi Border Guard agents and is also used by the Saudi Arabian National Guard. The number of Al-NAIF vehicles manufactured is largely unknown, but it seems to be at least 20 to 30 of these vehicles in service with the Saudi Border Guard agents and the Saudi National Guard. And the final policing vehicle and border protection vehicle developed by the Saudis so far is the Al-Qasr or Al-Qasr armored personnel carrier or anti-terror armored personnel carrier from 2016. This vehicle was also fitted with either one 12.7mm machine gun or one 20mm machine gun, but could also be fitted with another 40mm Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher, and either a manned turret or unmanned turret. The armor, just like the other vehicles, is the Stanag level 1 and 2 all-around ballistic protection, and the vehicle speed is also unknown. But the vehicle has a crew of 3 and can carry between 6 and 10 troops. Only about 100 of these have been made since 2016, and again, they are used by both the Saudi Border Guard troops and have been used also by the Saudi Arabian National Guard. And there you have it. These are the only vehicles that I could find that are currently being manufactured by Saudi Arabia as of 2021. And they are some of the, rare vehicles. They're not rare in number. These vehicles are manufactured in the hundreds. They are pretty rare when compared to the military equipment used by Saudi Arabia that is imported from Western countries or Eastern countries in some cases. If I had to choose, my favorite would be clearly the Al-Fahd, as it is the largest vehicle on the list. I also like the Saudi Al-Shabab MRAP based armored personnel carrier also. But which of these were your favorite? Please tell me in the comments section below. And until next time, this was J-Man Time, signing off.